But let's cross now to Adelaide and catch up with Rex Patrick, South Australian Senator who has been diagnosed with COVID-19. Rex, good to talk to you. We just talked during the break. You're saying you're not suffering at the moment. Obviously, you've been diagnosed with the virus, but you're pretty much asymptomatic at this stage?
Yes, so I haven't had any symptoms at all throughout the 2-week period since I had contact with Senator Bragg. And hopefully I won't get any symptoms, but that's just the nature of the beast for me.
Yeah, this it helps us to trace this, doesn't it, to work out how the obvious way a virus can spread around. Andrew Bragg went to a wedding south of Sydney. There were visitors from the US who were expected to have brought it in. 30 people have been infected from that wedding, and you interacting with Senator Bragg on a committee, you ended up with the virus and you're back halfway across the country in South Australia. This is how it can spread very quickly, and of course without any symptoms you won't know whether or not you're spreading it.
Yeah, and that is one of the difficulties of what happened. Look, I must say in the case of Andrew Bragg, and I don't blame him at all, he's as much a victim as any other person that has contracted the virus. He actually showed symptoms the day after I met with him. He did the right thing, went to the doctor. The doctor said, well, I can't imagine this will be COVID-19. But basically he hadn't had any contact. Of course, he later finds out, because he'd been to that wedding, that he had in fact been in contact with people who had COVID-19. And so it took about a week of time before I then was notified of his condition. In fact, he was notified and then I was notified straight away. Had he been allowed to do that test 2 weeks ago, I wouldn't have been. I wouldn't have gone to the press club in Canberra. I wouldn't have gone to all around the peninsula in South Australia. So there's a lesson in this for getting testing early and being a bit more liberal in allowing people to be tested.
Yeah, and in fact, I've heard complaints from people in the community who want to get testing and are denied testing, and they get frustrated that politicians have been able to get tested. They're referred to you and they've referred to Peter Dutton. They're suggesting that some people are getting tested more easily while others are being knocked back. What are the rules here, and how can we make sure that there's more testing available?
Okay, so there are generic rules that have been set up by the government, and those rules include the fact that you need to have had close contact with someone who's had COVID-19, and you must be showing symptoms. I didn't meet that criteria. However, I did visit a doctor, and it's my regular doctor, who understands completely the distances I travel, the number of people I meet with, and indeed the very public nature of my circumstances with people with anxiety. And he made a decision to allow me to be tested, just as anyone who walks into a doctor and presents a perspective that raises a flag for a doctor can also override the generic requirements set by government.
Yeah, well, it was a wise choice, obviously, in his case. Now,
well, and can I say the interesting thing is, had he not made that decision, I would have fallen outside my 14-day isolation associated with Andrew Bragg, and I would have gone to Parliament yesterday, and I would be in the South Australian community with COVID-19 right now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that's the crucial role of testing in all of this. I just want to get you on a couple of other issues while you're there, Rex Patrick. You mentioned Parliament. Is it the right thing for the National Parliament to basically up stumps till the other side of winter? In a national crisis like this, would there not be some way that the National Forum can meet before then?
Okay, so the Parliament is trying to strike the right balance between passing legislation, making appropriations that are necessary to respond to a crisis, and making sure we don't end up being a petri dish for COVID-19. Now, I wasn't in Parliament yesterday, but I can almost guarantee you the motion that would have been passed at the conclusion of the Senate would have been one whereby if a minister calls upon the Parliament to resume, then the Parliament will resume. So there's scope for us to be pulled back to Canberra if the need arises. So I don't think it's fair to say we've shut the door and we wouldn't respond, because we would.
Yeah, no, fair point. Just as they all went back for that one-day sitting yesterday, there's no doubt if the need arose that reconstitute the parliament pretty quickly.
And can I just say, inside the appropriations that were made, Senator Cormann was given a discretionary amount of $40 billion. Yep. Now, there were some safeguards that were wrapped around the use of that money, and I had a conversation with Senator Cormann. I know the opposition did. But we already have a contingency in place that allows Senator Cormann to expend public money to get testing equipment to respond to this virus as the needs arise.
Now, just finally, Rex Patrick, 4 states have closed off their borders to the rest of the country. Is that the right thing to do, or should we be dealing with this as a nation rather than treating each state separately?
Well, I think we have to recognise that we are a federation. I think there's general agreement that what we're trying to do is flatten the curve. There are a number of measures being put in place, generally consistent right across the country to achieve that aim. And social distancing is one mechanism, but also stopping people moving across state borders unnecessarily assists in that regard. We have to remember the borders are not shut. There are still essential goods being transported through them. If you have a good reason to travel, you won't be stopped. We just don't want people going from state to state. People are trying to control the situation and they're trying to do that for good purpose.
Well, thanks for joining us, Rex. I hope you don't show any symptoms. We'll keep in touch and wish you a speedy recovery.
I'm hoping to come out the other side of this as a super senator, immune from COVID-19.
Well done. Senator Rex Patrick there from South Australia.